With the release of their fourth studio album, 1994's Superunknown, Soundgarden were on top of the world. In 1994 alone, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden would all have #1 records. If you include late 1993, Nirvana had one too with their Unplugged record. As Soundgarden readied to release their follow-up in 1996, Down on the Upside, the band were teetering on imploding. Maybe it wasn't surprising given that things had changed for a lot of the big Seattle bands. Alice in Chains was limping along due to substance abuse, Nirvana was done, and Pearl Jam were still embroiled in their battle with Ticketmaster and refusing to do music videos. Soundgarden were coming to terms with their success, and in today's video, let's talk about why Soundgarden fell apart in the 90s. Formed in Seattle in 1984, Soundgarden would blend metal and punk rock, resulting in a sludgy sound. It was in 1987 they released their Screaming Life EP through fledgling Seattle label Sub Pop. They would release 1988's Ultra Mega OK on SST Records. Then Soundgarden became the first major Seattle band from that era to ink a deal with a major label, signing with A&M Records. They released their major label debut in 1989 with Louder Than Love, and returned in 1991 with Bad Motor Finger, a record that still held up as their best work by many fans. It was by the early 90s the band also cemented their classic lineup with frontman Chris Cornell, guitarist Kim Thayil, bassist Ben Shepherd, and drummer Matt Cameron. Though they were hailed as one of the big four from Seattle and more experienced than their peers, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains enjoyed success much earlier than they did. Thayil would tell Revolver, "I remember the Nirvana guys wanting to be on Sub Pop, saying we were their favorite band. The first time I met Kurt Cobain, I told him how much I loved their Love Buzz single, and he said, well, consider yourself our biggest influence." Following the release of Bad Motor Finger, guitarist Kim Thayil recalled hearing several songs that Chris Cornell had demoed for their follow-up, including Superunknown, Spoon Man, as well as Let Me Drown, and Black Hole Sun. He recalled thinking there's probably a few singles amongst those songs. It was at a Metallica gig before Superunknown would come out that the guitarist spoke to Metallica's manager Cliff Bernstein, who told him that Soundgarden was following the same career path as Metallica, telling him that their next record was going to be their breakout hit, and he was right. 1994 Superunknown was a massive album selling an impressive 6 million copies stateside and giving the band some of their most popular songs, Black Hole Sun, Spoon Man, Fell on Black Days, and The Day I Tried to Live. The tour for Superunknown represented the first time the members of Soundgarden would do their own headlining shows with an extensive stage production. Drummer Matt Cameron would tell author Greg Prado, "For the most part, it was pretty fun. Then towards the end of the tour, Kurt died, and I think the whole fabric of the group was starting to unravel a bit." Thayil would clarify that at this point in the band's career, there really wasn't any interpersonal tensions, but rather it was stressful always being on the road and dealing with their emotions without their support system, especially after Kurt Cobain died. He would add, "It wasn't fair. We didn't get to drive and be around our family during that period. We were supposed to be on the road, and that's when it sucked. People dying out of the Seattle music scene wasn't supposed to happen." Maybe foreshadowing the band's upcoming problems, the last date of the Superunknown tour did not go very well. Thayil would recall to Greg Prado, "Our last show was at Memorial Stadium in Seattle, a really bad show. Chris's voice was having a really f***ed up time. When the show was over, he just walked off stage, got into a car, and took off." When it came time to begin working on their follow-up album, 1996's Down on the Upside, the roles in the band were slowly shifting. The group's then manager and wife of Chris Cornell, Susan Silver, would remark how Matt Cameron tried to take more of a leadership role, and Chris became more withdrawn, while Kim was a peacemaker, but the business side of the band was slowly wearing him down, while Ben had a pretty explosive personality. It was Cameron's idea to do their next record in a less stressful environment. He'd felt that Superunknown was recorded under a pretty stressful set of circumstances with a big-name producer in Michael Beinhorn, and he wanted the band to go back to making records with their buddies. At the insistence of Cameron, they enlisted Adam Casper, a friend of the group who also worked as an assistant engineer on Superunknown. But not everyone was on the same page, and it resulted in the process feeling fractured. The band spent a little bit of time doing pre-production before heading to Europe in 1995 and doing some summer shows. Mudhoney guitarist Steve Turner would play some shows with Soundgarden that summer, and we'll recall to Greg Prato, it was the worst. The Soundgarden guys, none of them were talking to each other. Everyone's angry. It was no fun. The band would return from Europe with Cornell writing and demoing songs at his home, while the other members were writing their own stuff to bring to the fold. But the old days of collaborating on each other's tunes were long gone, with Thile recalling how his participation in the group was diminishing, with his only contribution to the album being the song Never the Machine Forever. Thile would also remark how there was a big communication breakdown between the band, telling Greg Prato, at some point what I thought was pre-production ended up being production. At one point, Ben Shepherd and Kim Thile had recorded a song with then Seattle Mariners pitcher Randy Johnson, who played drums, but Cornell never got around to doing the vocals, but Casper would remark how Randy Johnson was a much better pitcher than he was drummer. Based on numerous interviews the members gave, the band just became this thing where it was less about the music and the members never sat down and talked about their problems. Life just got so complicated with all the other trivial stuff, as they told Guitar Center here.
So there was a transition from being an indie band where virtually everything was done based on what the four of us decided we wanted to do and how we did it, even to being our own roadies, to then having a periphery of people needing to meet schedules, make decisions. And some of that is just the nature of how things are when your audience expands and you sell more records, and some of it was just the fat of a stupid industry that is now dead because of it. It was more of a day-to-day life becomes less enjoyable.
Casper would also remark how Superunknown saw the band go in a much more commercial direction, something Thile wasn't necessarily a fan of, wanting to stick to their trademark sound. Cornell's songs also proved to be more radio hits, with the band soon becoming a radio-friendly band. Only adding to the problem was that, according to his ex-wife, Susan Silver, Cornell was dealing with undiagnosed depression and wasn't really doing anything to take care of his mental health. Couple this with bassist Ben Shepherd, who was also going through depression and feeling lonely and having anger issues, and it was a powder keg waiting to explode. At one point, Silver reached out to Aerosmith's manager to get everyone communicating again, and he had recommended the book The Paradox of Success that was instrumental in getting Aerosmith back on his feet. But Soundgarden didn't seem to be a band that was going to react positively to group therapy. Their fifth record, 1996's Down on the Upside, would still prove to be successful, debuting at number 2 on the charts, going platinum, and producing a slew of hits including Pretty Noose, Bird in My Hand, and my personal favorite, Blow Up the Outside World. But it sold a fraction of what Superunknown did. Soundgarden would tour for Down on the Upside, but it did little to alleviate their issues. Cameron would recall to Mark Yarm, the sessions were certainly strained, and once we started touring, the shows were increasingly bad. Just horrible. A lot of drinking, bad vibes, rockstar. I was actually thinking about bailing at that point. Ben couldn't really get through an entire show without having some sort of temper tantrum. It was so just not about the music. Cornell, meanwhile, would tell the same author how he never drank in the early days of Soundgarden on the road because the band meant so much to him. But for the Down on the Upside tour, Cornell would admit, I was drinking all the time. I was playing shows drunk. I would have a keg cup full of vodka with ice before I walked on stage, and I wasn't aware enough to understand that wasn't good. Then on February 9th, 1997, over an hour into a show in Hawaii, bassist Ben Shepherd, who was upset with some technical issues, slammed down his bass and stormed off stage. Shepherd and Thile would argue backstage, with the band minus Shepherd playing a brief encore. While it's been long reported that this is the moment that Soundgarden officially broke up, it's not true. That wouldn't happen until a few months later. Despite the tour not going well, Cameron expressed some hope that they would record a new album after taking a bit of a break. In fact, he'd already assembled some song ideas. Then one day after the tour, he recalled Chris Cornell stopping by his house, which was unusual because he never ever came by before. Cornell would reek of alcohol and came by to tell Cameron that he was leaving the band. Cornell would then go to the homes of the other members to break the news. Both Cameron and Thile claimed they felt relieved by everything, with Shepherd probably taking it the hardest. Then nearly 2 months after their last show, the band released a statement on May 10th, 1997 that they were breaking up. Cornell would go on to pursue a solo career, but according to his ex-wife, that did little to alleviate his personal issues. She would recall the beauty of having the creative tension between band members is what helped him solidify his belief in his own songs. According to her, this led to him becoming more depressed and self-medicating with pills, ultimately leading to him getting divorced, something he would confirm in the same book. As for Ben Shepherd, his fiancée would leave him, his band was done, and then his other band, Hater, also broke up, and he would injure 3 of his ribs in a stunt accident that went wrong, and at one point he ended up almost overdosing on liquid morphine and got hooked to Valium. Fast forward 12 years later and Soundgarden would reunite in 2009. In a strange twist of fate, it was the music business that helped reunite the band. Thile would tell Revolver, "Initially, we reunited kind of as a partnership concern regarding our legacy. Hey man, we don't have a website. Friends of ours have kids who were in junior high and high school and learning instruments, and these friends were asking, why can't we find your t-shirts when we go to the store?" These discussions would end up kickstarting a reunion, leading to a tour and a comeback album, with their latest release coming in 2012 with King Animal. Sadly, 5 years later in 2017, Cornell would be found dead in his hotel room following a show in Detroit, effectively ending the group. In the subsequent years, his widow and the surviving members of Soundgarden would be embroiled in several ugly legal battles over unreleased material. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll Your Stories. Take care.